Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, the podcast where we bring you inside the world of joint ventures, strategic partnerships, and powerful collaborations. Each episode, you'll dive into conversations with top entrepreneurs, visionaries, and business leaders, unlocking the secrets to building profitable relationships that drive growth and success. Whether you're looking to expand your network, find new referral partners, or scale your business, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, presented by LeDuc Entertainment. Today we are joined by Casey Brown, who is the founder and CEO of Boost Pricing and a self-professed pricing geek. Casey,
Absolutely.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Adrian. I'm delighted to be with you today.
Can we start off? Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Boost Pricing?
Sure. So I am from Ohio, truck driver's daughter from the wrong side of the tracks with four brothers. So kind of a gritty gal, I guess. I grew up in the middle of nowhere in a town where boredom was invented. And then went to school later for engineering. I was a chemical engineer. I have a degree in it. I just couldn't do it if my life depended on it. But I studied chemical engineering, and then I double majored in Spanish, and then later went back and got an MBA. So if it sounds like I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, it's because I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And then started my career at GE as an engineer. Found my way eventually into pricing and just kind of fell in love with the discipline. I found it to be an interesting intersection of art and science, people and process, data and psychology. I think if you ever read an econ textbook, it looks like this really simple mathematical relationship, like charge more, sell less, charge less, sell more. But in the real world, it's a lot more nuanced and complicated than that. There's a lot more, I think of it like a little bit more like a game of poker. Everybody's bluffing. Everybody's trying to gauge the strength of their hand and guess at the strength of the other guy's hand. Buyers are lying about how much they're willing to pay. Sellers are lying about how little they're willing to accept, and kind of just fell in love with it. Went on a 25-year love affair journey with pricing, which is why I call myself a pricing geek, because I've not gotten bored with it yet. And about 15 years ago, founded Boost Pricing, and our stated purpose is really to help companies that deliver excellence to their customers command the prices they deserve.
Wow.
Because if you're excellent, you deserve excellent pricing. And too many companies are accepting mediocre pay for excellent work because of falling prey to customer tactics and stuff like that. So that's why we exist. That's what we do. That's our mission.
And can you tell me a little bit about when companies come to Boost, what are some of the pain points and problems that they're experiencing that you're helping them solve?
Yeah, absolutely. So our clients tend to be in B2B businesses where pricing is negotiated. Sometimes it's a B2C business, but a lot of times you might be a digital marketing agency selling marketing services to some other company, or you sell bolts and fasteners to a manufacturing company. I mean, so there's always this negotiation, right? So if you kind of have that as the backdrop, the challenges that we most often hear from business leaders, business owners, sales leaders is that they see their teams pricing from a place of fear, not from confidence. If you line up 100 people who sell stuff and you say, what do you love about being in sales? What do you love about selling and serving customers? None of them would tell you they love when they get to tell you the price tag. Like that's not the fun part. That's the hard part. So there's a lot of fear-based decision-making, a lot of pricing not to lose the deal versus pricing to win based confidently in value, too much discounting, too quick, too deep, too broad, too fear-based, too much internal negotiations. This idea of negotiating against ourselves. And basically just caving into price pressure from customers who want a better deal because that's what customers do. And especially when we're compared against someone who is inferior to us in terms of the quality we deliver. So we're pricing down to the lowest common denominator in our industry because of fear and competition. So those are the kinds of challenges that we hear and help with.
Now, how can business owners determine if they are undervaluing and underpricing their products and services?
That's a great question. Almost always there is an intuitive sense or understanding when they come to us that they are, but you're touching on something I think that's really important, which is like everyone. And look, I would love this too. It just doesn't exist. Everyone would like more certainty around the pricing opportunities. They'll say something like, I feel like we're leaving money on the table, but I'm not really sure where that cliff is. Like, I don't know how far we could push it before we suddenly lose a bunch of sales volume. So there's a lot of sort of feeling, intuition, belief, opinion And the only facts around this can be determined as we actually go into the market and try it. So
Right.
really, the limits of our pricing power are not something we can ever calculate in a spreadsheet. Those are things that are happen in real time negotiations with customers. It's like, I never could get $10,000 for service XYZ until I do, and now my new ceiling's in a different place. So the biggest challenge isn't necessarily not knowing where the ceiling is. Usually the biggest challenge is the fear of the team to go confidently stand in front of the customer and communicate that higher price, and then walk out with the most deals possible at the highest prices possible.
And you mentioned it at the top of the show. You mentioned it, and I'm curious to dive in more. I think it's really interesting. Can you speak about the role that psychology plays? I mean, this might be a big, huge, loaded question, but can you speak about the role psychology plays when it comes to pricing?
Oh man, it's everything. It's not everything, but it's most of it. Like, this is the thing: when people either know or suspect that there's some opportunity to move the number for their business,
Right.
the thing they go to is a spreadsheet. They go start pulling in cost information, or assumptions about competitive. Like, it's not a math problem. Pricing is almost never really a fundamental problem if I don't understand my numbers well enough. It's that, do I have the confidence to do it?
Hmm.
Because fear is running the show. I said this, it is the dominant emotion present for most pricing decisions in the world, and the most dominant emotion present in most price negotiations in the world. And when we make decisions from fear, the amygdala is in charge. That's the caveman brain. That's good at fight or flight. It's not very good at reasonable, nuanced, profitable decision making. So there is a huge role, whether it's psychology, neurochemistry, behavioral economics kind of stuff. Like, why do we make the decisions we do, and why do we behave in the way in which we behave, is very often less rational than we would like to believe. And that's
Right.
true both on the seller side of the table as well as the buyer side. And I think that if we don't take a look at that, if we don't acknowledge the truth of that, then we're sort of operating at this. We think the whole entire conversation is happening at this logical, rational level, and that's only a small piece of it, and we miss the boat on the opportunity.
Right. And it's interesting. I mean, obviously, and I could be completely wrong in this when I say this, but obviously anybody, can look at something and go, "Oh, that's way too expensive. That's too pricey. That's too expensive. I'm not purchasing that." But is there a flip side of that coin where buyers think, "Oh, that's so inexpensive that the product or service must be cheap and not good
Absolutely.
because it's so inexpensive?"
Absolutely. So there's something called the price quality effect, which is what you're referring to. It's where we use price as a proxy for quality. And if we see something as expensive, our natural kind of instinct is that must be really good quality. And if we see something, sort of suspiciously cheap, it must not be that good. That's why I say you never eat in a 99-cent all you can eat shrimp buffet, right? Like, that is not a good deal. Like, great price tag, not sure about the quality I'm going to get. So that's a really important point you're bringing up, Adrian, because I caution business leaders and business owners who are setting sales and pricing strategy all the time, be careful about being suspiciously cheap. There,
Right.
especially like if you're in a product or service business where that product or service is really critical to success. Like, I was speaking yesterday to this group of accountants that handle audit risk, and it's like, well, they're going to try to save $500 by going with this other accounting firm who's maybe not going to do as good a job as you will with their audit. Like, they're not going to do that. Right? They're
Right.
not out. Nobody wants to hire the cheapest lawyer in town. No one wants to hire the cheapest accountant in town, the babysitter. There's some stuff that you say to yourself, this is worth paying a premium for. The degree to which the product or service you sell, on the other hand, is very, very commoditized, it's a little less risky to play that game. But in general, I think I would always rather be reassuringly expensive than suspiciously cheap.
That's a great line right there. Can you tell me a little bit about when a client comes to Boost, what does your discovery phase look like with them when you're learning about what it is they do and what their price points are and everything? What
Yeah.
does that discovery phase look like?
We just ask a whole bunch of questions about what they're doing now. So we want
Hmm.
to understand, who are their customers? What products and services do they sell? What is unique and special and different about those products and services? In other words, what are kind of the key elements of their value proposition? What's their competitive landscape look like? who's on their team, how are those people compensated? Because if you're paying salespeople to go get big unprofitable deals, they'll do that. Never be surprised when somebody does what you pay them to do. So sometimes the incentive plan, you need to understand the role that plays, how pricing decisions are made inside the company, what role the salespeople have in in, like, do they have any discount discretion and authority? Like if management says, hey, this service is $10,000, does the sales rep only can sell it at 10,000, or can they go down to 9,500? So understanding like sort of that landscape of all of that as we head into the program allows us to tailor our work with them in a way that's very specific to their environment and their sales
Right.
cycle.
Now, when you approach a business and you're going into this, are the strategies that you utilize for pricing, is it sort of a one size fits all strategy, or do you really have to highly custom tailor it to what it is they're selling in their field and their business?
Sure. So it's probably important to maybe come up 50,000 feet really quickly and distinguish between two different things that happen inside. There's more than two, but I'm going to be sort of oversimplified here. That there is a difference between helping companies improve their pricing strategy, meaning what are we charging and how are we charging it, and their price execution. And
Mm,
so, what I have found, and I started this company 15 years ago with the idea of being a pricing strategist. I was going to sit down with the CEO and the sales leader and the head of marketing, and we were going to figure out, like, they've been doing cost plus all this time. They're leaving a ton of money on the table. Let's do value based for a variety of reasons, but mostly this one, I shifted away from it. And that reason is that isn't where the money is lost.
hmm,
Most of the money that is lost is leaked out through suboptimized pricing is not because the strategy isn't perfect. It's because when you put the strategy in the hands of the sales team and you do not have their hearts and minds, they are not equipped with the skill set and mindset to confidently communicate and defend price. That's where the leaks happen.
right.
So we several years into our existence really pivoted. At first we were a strategy, then we're like, well, we got to do strategy and the execution piece. We got to wrap support around the sales team or this isn't going to work. And then eventually we started to just really focus in on the execution piece. It's very tempting for companies who suspect they have pricing opportunity to say, let's hire, or either we'll figure it out or let's hire someone. Let's fix our strategy. And I
Right.
would say most companies have a B or B plus strategy. If you that isn't where your biggest opportunity is. You spend a lot of money and time fixing that strategy and making it perfect, and then you hand it to your sales team who isn't equipped to manage it, then you've handed your keys to a Ferrari to a toddler. Like, let's not do that. Let's take our solid B strategy, which is a good old, faithful Camry, teach the kid to drive that. Like, that is where the money is really on the execution. The reason that framework is important to the question you asked is if you're starting to talk to people about their strategy and how to structure pricing. So, for example, an accounting firm that wants to stop doing hourly building and they want to move to a value-based approach, or a manufacturing company that has one size fits all and they want to move to a segmented strategy. Yeah, you got to know the business quite well to effectively prescribe a strategy. On the selling side, though, on the execution side, it's far more industry agnostic because customers say the same thing in every industry. It's too expensive. It's outside my budget. So and so can do it cheaper. Is that your best number? Like, the tactics they use are the same across industries, which means the most effective countermeasures and the most effective ways to stand up to those tactics are pretty industry agnostic as well. That's
Hmm.
not universally true. There's always some things that are unique about industries to a certain degree, but I would say 80% of our proven process and content that we use with every client is the same. And that 20% is the tailoring. Whereas if you're working on strategy projects, it's easily flipped.
How I'm curious, how do you go about balancing competitive pricing and profitability? What is that? I mean, is that a fine line to walk?
It can be. It really depends a lot on the industry. If you're in a pretty competitive and commoditized industries, like, an example is some distribution businesses where the
Mm,
bottom line net profit might be 2, 3, 4%. It is, you are operating with such a tiny margin. But if you try to get overly bold with your pricing, you're going to lose a lot of sales volume because there's a direct competitor. I'm distributing the exact same thing as the guy down the street. The product is exactly the same. You buy it from me,
mm,
you buy it from them. Now I may have better inventory and faster response time, which may allow me to earn a little bit more. I can get a price premium, but I can't be 20 or 30% more. So
Right.
what happens in the commoditized end of the industry is it just gets squeezed
Mm.
there, and that's what makes that line finer. Now, if you go to the other end of the spectrum, let's imagine you're I don't know, you develop websites, right? You can get a website for literally free or $500,000 or more and everything in between. It is a very disparate and very widely priced business because there's wide variation in the quality and what you're buying.
Right.
I don't think it's nearly as hard in those kind of industries I don't think it's that hard to walk a fine line between making a really nice profit and still maintaining competitiveness. And I think it is because the difference between the companies in that industry are a lot greater than they are in a much more commoditized space.
And what are some of the more common mistakes? I mean, you've mentioned some already, but what are some of the more common mistakes that you see business owners making when it comes to pricing? And how can they go about resolving those problems?
Well, so I mean, yeah, I guess I'll hit a couple of the ones I already said again because they are the big ones. Like this
Yeah.
idea of negotiating against ourselves. This is something
Mm.
I see a lot. Like sit down with a customer and they say, "Here's the problems we're having. These are the needs. These are our needs. Can you help us?" And we say, "Oh, sure, we can help you. We got the perfect products and services for that." And we go off and we start figuring out the cost of everything, and we're adding it up. And 2 hours of 2 weeks of Jim's time at X, and this much of
Right.
this product at Y. Got the whole thing figured out, and we add it up, and it's like, this is $72,000. And then we're like, we sticker shock ourselves. Like, what? I think their budget's like 50 grand. There's no way they're going to. And then we go back to our proposal and we start shredding our own proposal. We take a red pen to it before we ever even present it to the customer. So then there's 2 rounds of discounts, right? First, we shoot arrows at ourselves, then we put it in front of the customer, and then they get their shot at us. So one is this sort of negotiating against ourselves or sticker shocking ourselves. Another is discounting too quickly in the face of objections because we're afraid to lose the deal. So
Mm.
let's say with that deal, I put that in front of the customer and I said, "Oh, we can do all this stuff. It's going to be great. It's going to be amazing, blah, blah, blah. Value sell, value sell." It's $72,000. And the customer says, "Oh, I don't know, Adrian. That seems, a lot higher than I was expecting. I don't think there's any way we're going to be able to do it for 72. If you can do it for 60, we can make that deal happen right now. Can we do that?" And
Right.
too many business owners start saying something like, "Well, 100% of 60 is better than 0% of 72." And we just spin out like, "Oh, I've been trying to get my foot in the door with this client forever." And we talk ourselves into it. And so we
Mm.
cave. Now, what if there was a different way to handle that did not result in you having to do that work for 60 grand and still get the business, which might mean you get it at 72, or it might mean you get it at 68. But like, let's not just like do some kind of knee jerk panic out of fear, which is what I see happening quite a lot.
Right. And do you often find when you approach a business that some of the, troubles that they're having with their pricing are obvious, but it's just they're so entrenched in the day to day that it
Yeah.
takes a third party like Boost to come in and say, "Guys, what are you doing?"
There's all this money on the table. Yeah, it is reasonably common. I think that and I understand this. I mean, there's two things. One is all of us are very close to our own world, right? Like it's 2 inches in front of our face, everything, all the
Right.
problems, all the stuff with the team, all the customer stuff, all the product stuff, all the services, all the everything. And so it's a little hard sometimes to get the perspective that an outsider can have on the opportunity. So that's one of them. And then the second is if you're a business owner or leader who has a team of people whose job it is to sell on your behalf, sometimes the owner or the leader gets it, but they have a difficult time getting their people to do it. And I always say it's like you can't coach your own kid in sports, right? Like
Right.
your kid's up to the plate and you're watching him hit and he's crowding the plate and he's crowding the plate and and you say, "Step back, man, you're crowding the plate." No, he does not listen to you. But the coach says, "You're crowding the plate." He takes a half a step back and cranks one over the right field fence. And you're like, "I've been telling him that," right? So
Right.
it's not uncommon that sometimes that's also
Mhm.
at work. And, all of a sudden you bring a quote unquote outside third party expert and it says the same thing that the leader said in a,
Right.
maybe obviously in a more refined way, but that can be part of what is at work when you have that situation too.
Now, when you approach a business, what sort of data and what sort of analytics are you getting from that business in order to help them with their pricing strategies and methods?
Yeah. So we don't need any. Because what we're mostly doing is pulling back the curtain on the tactics customers use to get your stuff for less, and then arming you as the seller with the methods and messaging and tools, and most importantly, the confidence to go negotiate with a customer who would love to underpay you and still win the deals at higher prices. So it's none is necessary, because what we're mostly doing there is addressing a skill gap and a mindset gap, and it's not as necessary to have a pile of data. That said, when the data is available, we love to bolster the training programs that we do with some data, and I use it. We use it not so much as a strategy setting tool, but as an opportunity identifier. So
Right.
there's times that we'll pull, we'll ask them for some sales and profit margin data, and we put together some, very simple analyses. They're very graphical because picture's worth 1,000 words. Or as Gino Wickman, who's the author of Traction, says, a picture's worth $1,000. So we have these very graphical versions of these tools where we basically kind of put up all the data and say, what do you see here? And it's like all this super profitable customers. And then there's these really obvious outliers over in the corner. And so that's really, to me, about helping companies. How do we use the data we already have to identify where pricing opportunity exists? And I'm a big fan of the Jim Collins, author of Good to Great. He talks about bullets before cannons. So it's sort of like, where can we take the least effort and the least risk to get the biggest return? And we can use data to point us to those lower risk areas, those lower effort areas that can still give us a nice return. Because you're not going to want to go to your biggest customer that buys $3 million a year from you and say, hey, we believe we got great stuff, so we're going to raise your prices to 20% tomorrow. That can be a really risky maneuver. But with your smaller customers or your less profitable customers, you can use some tools to help you identify who's the lowest risk.
Right. Well, and this might be a little bit of an off the wall question or a little bit out there, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Hit me. I love it.
The big kind of conversation today in the emerging tech space is AI. Is AI going to play a role in that data collection, do you think?
I am completely excited and maybe a little bit scared, but mostly excited about the role that AI will play, not just in this aspect of business, but I think it's going to change everything. I mean, you can love it, hate it, you can fear it, you can be excited about it. It is going to change
here.
everything. Right. So yeah, it's here. So I have some ideas, some inklings, I think, about how this is going to factor into pricing and selling and buying. I think certainly, and this is not just because of AI. There has been over time a real democratization of information and visibility and transparency. If you look 20 years ago at the percentage of the buyer's journey that was completed before they had their first conversation with their salesperson or the CEO or someone, it was a tiny bit of it. They learned most of what they needed to know about the product or service by talking to someone from the company. That has shrunk. Now it's 80-20. It's like most of the buying journey is done by the time they're actually having a sales conversation. I think AI is going to only add to that and accelerate that. I think there are plenty of folks that are pretty scared about what that means for buying and selling. I would say as long as computers aren't buying and selling, and I think we're a ways off from them actually doing the transaction, they will inform the transaction on both sides. And of course, the most prepared, the most effective, the most discerning sellers and buyers are going to win more deals. These are just tools, right? And they make really strong people that know how to use them and use them well are going to be have an advantage.
Absolutely. And we've spoken a little bit about your business. We've spoken a little bit about Boost. I'd like to speak a little bit about you. What inspired you to get into this field? I mean, it's pretty niche, right?
Yeah, it's super. I mean, it was not on my vision board as a kid, like I was like, well, I was going to be a princess, but then I found out you had to inherit a role like that. So I guess I'll go be a pricing consultant. Like it was not the plan. But the short version of that is that I guess I hinted at it a little bit in my intro, but I grew up below the poverty line. And so I wanted to be an actor when I was a kid. I loved to perform and make people laugh and tell stories. But that did not look like a reliably straight line out of poverty, like trying to pursue a theater degree or something like that. And I was good at math and science, and engineers got paid well. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll go do that. I started my career as an engineer and really liked it. I liked the analytical and technical aspects of it, but I'm an extrovert. and I love people, and I love to talk, and I love to interact, I love to and so it was a poor fit for the field, because I was stuck in a lab doing a lot of analysis, and I was like, I'd pop my head out like, is there anybody to talk to? So I didn't fit there. And at the time I was a early Six Sigma black belt in GE under the Jack Welch heyday, and did rotations in a few different areas. I did a rotation in marketing, I did a rotation in sales, and then I did a rotation in pricing. And I was just kind of hooked. I was hooked because of, kind of what I hinted at the intro. It's like, on paper, it's simple. You have something of value. I want it. I have money. I'm going to pay you for it. And that is like, it is. But like anybody who's actually negotiated real pricing in the real world, it's so much more complicated than that. There's so much like nuance. It's gray, it's mysterious, it's complicated. You're trying to like suss out the bluff on the other side. They're trying to suss out your bluff. And I guess I got hooked by the intrigue of that, I suppose. And then once I understood how financially massively impactful it is to the financial performance of a business. So it's the biggest financial lever you have. X% increase in sales volume or X% reduction in expenses don't drive the same kind of impact as X% increase in price. And most businesses can do a small price change a lot easier than they can do a big volume change. So I don't know. I got fascinated early and away I went. And I was in pricing in corporate America for a long time. And then about 15 years ago, hung out my shingle.
And you're obviously a sought after consultant, but you're a sought after speaker as well. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the speaking engagements you've done?
Yeah, I think, it's funny because I told you I wanted to be an actor as a kid, and now I'm back on big stages in front of big groups of people. So it kind of came full circle. But I think why I enjoy speaking and writing and other kind of content related parts of my job is I really like making complex things simple, or boring things interesting. So like, for example, I made a kind of admittedly somewhat lame joke earlier, but like this idea that like you never want to eat it in 99-cent all you can eat shrimp buffet. Like, that makes the point of the price quality effect, and people get that. It's like, oh yeah, I get that. So I love making complex things simple and boring things interesting and connecting the dots. And I'm a sucker for a laugh. Like if you laugh when I tell a joke, I'm hooked. I'm such a ham. So it was kind of the perfect storm. I have a lot of knowledge about this one weird little niche. I'm good at telling things in a simple way, and I love to be entertaining and have people sort of spellbound by the things I say. So I ended up doing more and more and more speaking, and just love it. I love it.
Right. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And when you think back on all the people and all the businesses, all the clients that you have helped through Boost Pricing over the years, is there a story that you could share with us of a business or a client or an individual that really stands out that you saw a really positive transformation in as a result of your help and guidance?
Yeah. The hard part, let me pick the right story to
I know,
tell.
right? Another one of those loaded questions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes. So there's one person I'm thinking of in company, and I won't say his name just in case he wouldn't want me to, but he's a person who saw me speak once, and he runs a transportation and logistics firm. And the pandemic was very, very difficult right at the beginning on their business. And they were really trying to figure out, like, they were just scrambling to figure out what to do, which certainly wasn't just about pricing. But he and I had already known each other previously. And he said, I think my team is freaking out. And, as you kind of heard throughout our conversation, a common theme in pricing is fear. And when something happens, like the pandemic, like a global recession, like massive tariffs, like whatever, if there's a massive external event, that fear can turn to panic really quickly. And as soon as that you're operating from a place of fear, then you just want to underprice everything. And their margins were really under attack. And he had, I think, the foresight to, in one of the first in his industry to kind of jump at, like, we have to get our people ready, and everyone else is not spending money, and he's investing in training. And he had us do a training program with his team. And he told me about a year later, he showed me the profit chart, and it just went up and to the right. And he said, I don't think if we'd have done that program at that time, we'd still be in business. I don't think we would have made it through. And of course, that's super gratifying to me, because for me, pricing is mission-driven work. I think if you're excellent at what you do, you got to be paid like you're excellent. And too many companies are underpricing, and then that's robbing them of the resources that they could use to grow, innovate, hire more people, add new lines of business, pay themselves and their people better. Now you're talking about paychecks, you're talking about families and communities impacted. It's like if we do great work with our clients, somebody gets to make an extra house payment on their house or pay their daughter's college tuition. It's like real human beings' lives impacted through the work we do, and that means the world to me.
That's incredible. Casey, this has been an awesome conversation. If anybody out there listening could use your help, could use the help of Boost Pricing, where can people find you?
Great. Thanks for asking that. So first of all, there's a bunch of, at the low price of free, we put out a lot of resources. So I write blogs, I make videos, I put a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can find me at Casey Brown Boost. We also put out a blog a couple times a month and several videos out on YouTube. So you can find us at boostpricing.com or find us on YouTube at Boost Pricing. And then from there, I have a book I wrote, came out last year. It's called Fearless Pricing. So that's at a price point of $9.99 if you want to buy the Kindle version. So, if you got a couple bucks to spend on this problem, you could buy the book. And then from there, we certainly have programs that are designed for solopreneurs or sales teams of one. We're talking price points below $1,000. And then it kind of goes up from there, depending on the complexity of the business, the size of the business, how many team members they have and what they're looking for. So we seek to have a solution at every price point because I really want this to be available to everybody who needs the help.
That's fantastic. Well, Casey, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been an absolutely great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was fun for me too.
And thank you everyone for listening. This has been Partnerships for Profit presented by LeDuc Entertainment. Casey, thank you so much again.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Partnerships for Profit. We hope you've gained valuable insights on how to form profitable partnerships and take your business to the next level. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Got a partnership story to share or someone you'd like to see featured on the show? Reach out to us. Until next time, keep building those partnerships for profit.